what goes around comes around, that's for sure. Now we have one last generation that hasn't been primed with mRNA. And I think we should try to protect that one last group, put our hope in them to see what it's like to live a healthy life. One president that moved in an embassy from Tel Aviv to what is pretending to be the real Jerusalem today, RJ. That's the world we live in. And he's mad about a lot of things. And that DEI, the transgender stuff, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But I still think that, the people like where I go to school that are teaching women's studies that are, I don't think they realize they could be in real danger. They could be like, were you teaching this lie? Did you really think that a doctor doesn't know what sex a child is born? And you're in charge of a university? I think you're fired. I don't know if these guys have to worry about their job or their lives. Hey, Vicky's here and the Rebel Duster. Good to see you. China, since people in power have been pushing opium, and that's what those tea companies were talking about back in the day. China had a false trust in diplomacy and honor and what is it? Treaties. So after 2 opium wars and then a Boxer rebellion that was finished off with no quarter, and 100 years for China to grow in technology, go back to over, what do they got? 2 billion people, they say. 100 years to stew in their gullibility and trust that honor and diplomacy, and that if they say, look, stop selling heroin, they would, but they didn't. So that's where we are today. Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood Was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I don't know if you saw the thumbnail, RJ, about the FEMA camps. Let's just skip the re-education center.
Well, that was a big deal back when Obama was president. I know it.
I think we have some of this stuff pulled up.
Yeah, for a while it seemed to be a topic of discussion.
And I think, I did a show today where now they're teaching love and the synapses in your brain and how the Israel and Palestinians can get together, but it takes an intervention. And I think that intervention is going to be like, look, if you can't be intervened, through the mass media, you'll have to go to a camp. I think there could be something like that coming. I'm putting it out there right now, and I've got this show and my good friend RJ, the famous Randy from Wisconsin, going to break it down here tonight. Let's get these things out of the way because I got some really cool stuff here, man. It's like, first, this fair use disclaimer, because I'm going to be showing a lot of people talking about a lot of things. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. That's the thing, man. We'll just start over here. So I took some pictures today. You can expect this I think I made a movie about this, There's a lot of things going on in the world since the last time I talked to the people this morning. Look at that. I went on a road trip today to a farm.
Spuds everywhere.
Look at that. They're storing these potatoes and they got to wash them off. These were picked last August or something like that. They got, you don't want to be a farmer? You got to have all types of equipment. These are their seeds.
The
They got to,
eyes?
yeah, well, they got to have women. No, they got to buy these plants from Colorado Mesa University so that they're guaranteed sterile. Now, he has 2 women that work full time taking these leaves apart in the right places, and that each stem can make 10 potato seeds that they grow in that greenhouse I showed you. But it all starts right there with the copyrighted these things that the women do. So there it is, flat as Illinois, except for the mountains in the background. Just a
Right.
couple of seconds, RJ. I just wanted to show you. Look at what I made a movie. This is a farming in Colorado. If you want a job, you got to spend a lot of money, man. And they don't. A lot of it's through Walmart, so they have to sell it. They can't sell it to the stores in town. They already got contracts.
Volume discount, huh?
It's like the Irish potato famine. This is how they couldn't get it out fast enough.
So they've been graded and washed, graded, and
Yep.
they're not doing
Segregated.
any processing. They're not making potato chips. They're not making French
No,
fries.
they're just selling potatoes, man.
They're not making instant potatoes where it's dehydrated down. Right, it's all just whole, like bakers or whatever you want to, however you want to serve them.
See, this machine here, this gets it as close to the 10-pound bag as it can. The whole separation that you saw going on before that is to get it to this stage so that they're doing 10-pound bags today here, 5 and 10 pounds.
So that's all packaging.
Boy,
right
that's
there.
loud, man. So this is our world, Feminism, satanic witches, it's all new. This guy here had an interesting thing, where he brought up all about the, every time Bill Clinton was with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's convinced there's something to that QAnon. It's just that he doesn't expect it to pay off this time. But as he was caught up in the middle of nowhere and all of a sudden he's believing all this stuff, he still believes all that stuff. He just doesn't think that the president's going to come through. Maybe going. I know I got more pictures.
It was a snow job. What?
Oh yeah, I wanted to see. So we might be looking at some of this. These are 33. Is this the sword of life? For the Kabbalah it is, but in our world it's real. But this is the spine, and it does control everything in our body. And almost half the things in our body don't contain our DNA. I just found out that missing thing between the wireless connections in our brains, it's acetylcholine. That's how I would pronounce it. They just found out about it, so I'm sharing it with you guys. Did I show these pictures yet? Just thought, we are a mud flood show, and
Can you dig it? Yeah.
a lot of weird stuff going on in the world today. This Paul Ryan, he was going to be the vice president with Mitt Romney, but Mitt Romney kind of didn't really go that hard at it because, well, he's better than Ted for gay rights, and so he kind of backed off and helped elect the first gay president, re-elect him. That's supposed to be Osama bin Laden. Do you think it looks like him?
In his younger days, these are early times.
Yeah, early times in the 80s when he was fighting the Russians in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That looks like a good movie. Walt Disney, Education for Death. It was in Technicolor. Weird stuff going on in the world. That guy did it. I mean, who's going to put him in charge? You're our worshipful master. These hats got back in the news.
They were put reverently into the earth. It could have been done at sunrise in the presence of the dawn goddess, or perhaps it was done in darkness, lit only by fires, when she herself was residing in the underworld. It would make sense if it was also done in the dark of the longest.
So if you had put this on a flat earth and charted these as moon phases, supposedly this is a calendar, RJ.
Night of the winter solstice.
What do you think of that?
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty thin. It'd have to be because you're going to wear that hat. And the thing is they're everywhere, I guess. I did a little thing on it, but I didn't do the whole show. They told on the Truman Show that they found all these things. You know, everything's been discovered. We're never going to learn anything new. This was
discovered and re-hidden, huh?
Repackaged, rebranded. Definitely
for what they are willing to share, but I doubt if they're sharing everything.
Yeah, I think it's that French Renaissance and trying to prop up John Locke and David Hume and Robespierre and Greek, and it's just like 12 years later they put Napoleon back in charge. They said, you know what, this isn't working. This was interesting.
1890, this had increased to 10,000. By 1900, it had reached 50,000. It was one of the first cities in Brazil to have electric lighting, telephones, a university, and tramways, with green American streetcars. The municipal market was designed by English architects. Its floating...
This is in the middle of the jungle of Brazil.
But they didn't appreciate it, or what?
They do appreciate it. Man. They were ready to make it.
I mean, at the time, when they found it.
They were looking for rubber, man. They had this new thing called automobiles, and they needed wheels to make the world go round.
That had hospitals, a public library, a zoo, a racecourse, a bull ring, a botanical garden. Its paving stones were sent from Portugal. It was the world's largest market for diamonds. It had more movie theaters than Rio and more playhouses than Lisbon. And it was wild. There were dozens of nightclubs, bars, and brothels.
Oh, well, maybe we'll get back.
Yeah, they probably added those businesses.
Yeah, because there's money on the table. This is just, I get it. You can move a few things up to the Leadville, Colorado, 2 miles elevation, build a small one. This is huge in the middle of the Amazon, man. And there's still people that go there. They make a big deal about the two rivers run together, but their waters don't mix. Brazil was going to be, it was in the running to be, the new Zion, the new Jerusalem was going to be there. I think they wear the Phrygian caps too.
But there the climate is probably, I'm not more, but it doesn't fluctuate like it will to the north as much.
I wonder if it's on one of those grid lines, you know what I mean? But this statue, this doesn't look like it was just built a couple, 150 years ago because they needed rubber. This is the Statue of Liberty. I mean, to me, there's Mercury, the caduceus in his hand there. There's the medical symbol.
Any broken chain anywhere hanging there?
Where's your broken chain? It's on there.
It's only as strong as the weakest link.
This is kind of weird stuff too. Look at it. It's like So it's
There's
in the middle
your
of,
anchor to hang on to.
yeah, get the little angels in charge, man. Okay. And what was interesting is that this town is right next to it, you know, and 10,000 people after the Civil War in the United States that were on the losing side, the Confederates, decided that they were going to move to this town in the Amazon, kind of by Fordlandia. I think this guy might mention it.
Years. It had hospitals, a public library, 25,000 rubber estates sprung in the world. The robber barons ruled them with an iron fist. On the Madeira River, Nicolas Suarez had 10,000 employees on his payroll, controlling 8 million hectares of rubber forests. In addition, he owned ranches with 250,000 head of cattle.
Okay, well, that doesn't have anything to do with the Confederacy. Oh, look at that. The most criminal employment organization ever.
Criminal employment organization ever spawned. But the existing population of Amazonia was never going to be enough to meet demand, and it would be laborers fleeing drought in Brazil's northeast that would meet it. This had historically been sugar and cattle country, but the drought had baked the land and killed as many as 500,000 people. Many of these starving and neglected backlanders fled into the Amazon, helped by the government, hoping to make a new life in the
Tourist
rubber
place
trade.
today.
Some 25,000 rubber estates sprung up throughout the rainforest. And
all right, well, let's move on.
Many of those, and sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump. And when do they break with him? You know, because at some point, you know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members.
Whoa. Now, as we learned this morning, you can teach people this, but sometimes it takes an intervention. And if they only have a few tax dollars left,
You mean an intervention that requires like pharmaceuticals or something, or even more invasive?
Possibly. Minimum sterilization.
Sure.
In maximum, it would be culling of like, look, if these guys are going to insist on not taking a vaccine so that we won't get sick if we get in contact with them, then they'll have to kill us. That's conjecture. That's my opinion. Anyway, here's what she just said.
And only half of them wear masks.
Programming of the cult members.
Terms being tossed around like deprogramming Trump followers.
All of America needs deprogramming because we've all been negatively influenced by Donald Trump.
Can't sit down with people that don't recognize there was an insurrection. Megan alluded the other day to the deprogramming that Katie Couric talked about.
Deprogramming that might work in other cases is
now, RJ.
And it might not work.
Hey, you've heard that one thing of be careful what you wish for. Because right now, I would think all, like history professors that teach feminist studies that are teaching the youth of America might have to answer someday. Do you really believe that we brought our civilization up to the point of it? In the last 20 years, you figured it all out. It'd be much better if women were in charge. Do you want to stand behind that? Who's going to need the re-education here pretty soon? And I'm not saying I'm for fascism. I am not. I'm against it.
And all the women they want to put in charge, well, they're not mothers, or they might be mothers something, but
in utero counts.
it's obviously proven to be difficult.
But many of them have allowed the lies really to seep into their soul, and it's beginning to.
Do you think they're going to have to, like right now?
It's like a comedy show.
All of your scientists were lying when they told you that a doctor did not know when a child was born if it was a boy or a girl by whether or not it had a penis.
Or when life begins. for the individual.
Yeah, so they're convinced that these last 50 years where Satan has got abortion legal around the world, that it's a constitutionally protected thing. They found it in the Constitution, that section about privacy between a doctor and a pregnant woman. He looks like he's smirking.
Well, he can't keep a straight face either. I mean,
he's got to try harder.
He knows he's talking crap. So.
Look at this guy. Didn't he get caught wanking the monkey after a live call on Zoom? And it's like, and then they found out later, it was like, yeah, he thought the call was over. And he usually had phone sex with one of the girls that was in the room. And she was like 90.
Raskin told the New York Times that he's ordered books about cults and deprogramming to try to understand his Republican colleagues.
There are a couple accounts, libs of TikTok, a few, really prominent anti-trans and sort of far-right activists who started to essentially make the argument that any...
That's not a very big crowd. Anyway, we might save that one and come back to it because it's the hit that keeps giving.
Hello and welcome to ATP Report. It's the Katie and Barry Show. Katie Hopkins, all the way from the UK, has come to the United States to explain our political mess to us. Hi, Katie.
I think that's a bit grand. I'm a respectful outsider who's come in support of MAGA and decent, ordinary Americans. And most of my time, Barry, I spend listening. But yeah, these are crazy times, that's for certain.
All right, so you were in D.C., and we've done a number of segments of you on the ground in D.C., and now you're in beautiful, sunny, and get this, free Florida. It's not locked down. It's not insane. What's it like in Florida?
I'm telling you, what I want to do now is pick this up and spin it around and just show it, like as if people haven't seen the sea before. But where I'm looking here, there's 3 people jogging, there's
to liberate these states. So the working people can be liberated for economic, social, and racial oppression they've been suffering under.
That southern states are not red states. They are suppressed states, which means the only way that our country is going to heal.
When she went to school at Boston University, they called her Sandy. She was in a sorority, and she was a really rich girl in a rich school. But now she's identifying as an oppressed minority, RJ. You buying it?
No, I don't have a budget to purchase any of that nonsense.
So you hate women?
Must be. It's got to be it.
You're not supposed to.
That would be the conclusion.
That's the worst. You don't know how to argue. Okay, there's that. So that was that same girl there. Some of these,
Can you afford to pay most of the time?
He's a committed. I think he's into marrying trans women. So Bill Ayers, he's cooked by Bernadette Peters. You ever heard of her?
I believe I have.
Bernadette Dorn. That was it. Bernadette Peters is a famous actress. You might have seen her. Bernadette Dorn was his wife. She formed a terrorist group called the Weathermen Underground.
Yeah, I think they did some renovations there in Madison one day.
With a bomb.
Yeah.
They were trying to redecorate that library with a bomb. They killed the security guard. They didn't know he was there. He married her. And then they got forgiven from that and hired at the University of Chicago, which is a Jesuit school, where this guy, President of the United States, Barack Obama, went to teach and learn and be an educator. And they encouraged him to run for president. So he did. How about that?
Got him some tricks, yeah. Good for them.
They want to re-educate you.
From the 1970s says it all. 4 bombs at Murtaugh home. Notorious terror group, the
Weather Underground claiming responsibility for an attack on the family of a New York State Supreme Court justice. The bombing was led by radical Bill Ayers, the same guy screened right, who eventually formed a relationship of some sort with Democrat presidential nominee Barack Obama.
While my parents, my brother, sister, and I were asleep in our house, the Weather Underground launched an attack on our family home, set off at least 3, possibly 4 bombs, one of them under the gas tank of the family car bomb, looking to kill us. The New York cell of the Weather Underground that launched the attack on my family. 3 weeks later, at Bill Ayers' direction, they were assembling bombs in Greenwich Village in order to attack the Officers Club at Fort Dix, New Jersey, whose organization cost the lives of at least 3.
It's like looking in a mirror. So this guy, he's a bad guy. Wow. And now they're very respectable professors with tenure and money. Man. Huh.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. We become responsible then for administrating, 250 million people. And there was no answers. No one had given any thought to economics. How are you going to clothe and feed these people? The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States.
They probably do. Is this the same one?
Credit for the bombing at our home and in other New York targets. Bernadine Dorn was an attorney by training. She couldn't get admitted to bar because of her crimes. Bill Ayers' family got her a job at a large Chicago law firm, Sidley and Austin, in the 1980s. She was a contemporary at that law firm in the 80s with Michelle Obama.
I guess that part I needed to prepare for. So, along with the smells like adrenochrome, research also implicates that the referred behavioral effects are moderated by neuroendocrine phenomenon. That means it causes an action. They don't have to be able to explain it. That's what a phenomenon is, something that was caused, involving serotonin. What do they don't know how Prozac works, but it involves serotonin reuptake inhibiting is their goal. Dopamine, what is that? Oxycontin, yeah. But your body makes it. Epinephrine, neoepinephrine, hypothalamic pituitary, what in the world? Limbic system. I do know a little bit about that. But okay. So they got these casual relationships between these behavioral and neuroendocrine things, and both animal and human studies suggest that societal environment has a strong influence on the consequences of stress. And I never really understood, except that I know they like us to be in fear of why they would fake atomic weapons. That's so over the top that that where you have everybody that can read is afraid of that. We could have mutual mass destruction. Go ahead, RJ. I've been rambling.
Well, then why would you fake going to the moon? Because you can't.
We chose to go to the moon because Russia did a Sputnik. Come on. Chose to go to the moon because and that's the same thing. How far back does that same plan go? Because you wouldn't have been able to fake the moon unless you faked the math and convinced everybody that wanted to be paid by the people that teach at academia. There's 97% of everything physical in the universe is called dark matter. It's so dark you can't see it. We've never found it, but it makes our math work. And with this math, we can do quantum physics and then actually separate and blow up everything in the whole everything. And everybody's supposed to go like, wow, I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, you'll cause Jesus to let go of it because, currently he's holding everything together. So is what you cause him to let go of it.
Sergio wants to be, he got a serious question from Victoria. And I guess I could just save him $120 because Sergio, you're not going here, are you? To this conference, it's $150, but it's 2 days. It's a Thursday and a Friday. They're going to study their triune God. These are famous.
Oh, I sent that to you.
It's only $150, RJ. I don't think I'm going to make it either.
That to you. That's
visible and invisible, and in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only begotten.
So far, so good.
Son of God.
Oh, good.
Begotten from the Father before all time, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not created, of the same essence as the Father, through whom all things came into being, who, for us men.
Okay, so I just wanted to look at you. That really, you're going to show a guy painting, and this is what you got. We're going to do this.
Is he painting outside the lines, or
this is their commercial?
Yeah.
And because of our salvation,
this is what Sergio's not going to like in the next 10 seconds.
Came down from heaven and was incarnate by the Holy Spirit and the Virgin Mary, and became
like Virgin Mary had anything to do with it. All she just said is like, well, whatever. She's the one that did get commended by saying, you know what, you didn't doubt.
Question. She had some questions and they were answered, and as did Zacharias when Elizabeth was carrying John the Baptist, but he couldn't speak until after the child was born
because he doubted.
Well, he had, how can that be? Because Mary had a similar, how can that be? She never knew a man. But well, whatever. That's how it was, and happened and recorded, and I'm okay with all of it. I'm just saying.
Right. Let's look it up. Because I know that the Magnificat, whatever she did was good, because she's one of those girls. Like, there's this one girl that drove a tent peg through a man's head, and there's other, like Rebecca. There's girls in the Bible that they say, you're going to always remember her for this. You know what I mean? So here, where is she singing?
Oh, yeah, just like the one that was anointed, Jesus with the oil, less than a week before he was crucified. Kind of the same, similar remark, for what, even though that could have been sold and, and the money could have been given to the poor, Jesus rebuked them for criticizing her for doing that in that way.
He did make a point of saying, and I didn't even know her name.
Would be remembered for it.
Yeah. So here's the deal. We can, I named my first daughter's middle name Marie, because we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, because we know that here we know God is saying, blessed are you among women. Nothing more, nothing less.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And blessed is the fruit of your womb. Well, yeah. And why is this granted to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For behold, when the sound of your greeting came to my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. and blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her from the Lord. And Mary said, my soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed, for he is Gibbarim, who has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Let's just make sure that I'm not making that up, because I know a lot of people go like, wait a minute, no, I'm afraid that, oh, and it's not a Gibbarim. It's a mighty
And
one.
Zechariah had
I
no
know.
comment.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not the same as a Gibbarim, but Gibbarim, this is the Greek equivalent to the Gibbarim. Let's see if they can at least throw me a bone here, because it means mighty and strong, as in Isaiah 6, relating to. We'll see if Isaiah 6 has a Gibbarim shakedown, breakdown. I believe they're talking about Isaiah 9:6, was it? If it's not Gibbarim, it still doesn't mean it's not there. Yeah, it's Gibbarim. Gibbor. It's your Gibbarim, your strong, mighty warriors. The same one that, like Nimrod of old. So we got the firing up there. All right, I do want to touch. So this is where I was learning about that. Acetylchlorine, the neurotransmitter. They've got us all worked up. They're under stress. They've taught us fear for one reason, that our bodies aren't working right. They're attacking especially the women and their thyroids. They got women talked into, I should get thyroid so I'll lose a few pounds. Parasympathetic nervous system. We'll look at that. Another one where it looks like that's soared. Choline. I was just amazed of how fast they're learning about these things, and it is our brains that the wireless connections, the stones crying out, it's all right there. It's all going to be right there. We are alive because God wants us to be alive. And it's like that map of the world where the Joker map, it's in a situation like that. There's something to the jesters and the clowns, but people, it doesn't mean they're demons. It just means that they're messing with us, man. And what is this? When did they even? It's again 2021, and now they've got it all figured out. They don't even know why serotonin needs to be inhibited from re-up intaking. It comes down to, and even when you get somebody that, this girl, she makes a lot of sense, RJ, but at the end, she's pushing Russian Orthodox.
You talked about your book a little bit, Pulp Feminism.
But a couple of minutes of the beginning of this is enough to break your heart and realize this was an occult movement from the beginning to prop up the women, to make them the head of the universities. The men can't do it. Like there were flappers. And then
so how current is this video?
A couple years or a couple days. Yeah, 4 days.
Okay.
Kind of the secret history that people don't know about.
So people always ask like why I wrote the book or how did I end up getting into all that, and it's basically what I just told you guys. So like here I am, I'm a young adult, I made a lot of mistakes in my 20s, that really I had definitely responsibility. I'm not saying I didn't make mistakes or do things I knew I probably shouldn't. I did. I moved in with my boyfriend right after high school, but the culture, my family, and even the church I was in at the time all told me that's fine. At least you're monogamous, at least you're gonna get married, right? That was the plan. We're gonna get married. So really it's no big deal. And I thought, well, I'm not doing what my other friends are doing, which is going to college and going to frat parties. And I had friends that, would go from one guy to the next,
Well,
week after week after week.
that could
And
got so
partying.
much for good intentions. I mean, I didn't even make it through high school, and I was living with, well, an extremely young adult. She was older than I was, but we were the same age for 2 weeks every year.
That's basically at that point in your life. Wow, you were 10% different, but at this point you're the same age.
Things at that time, we think things are progressing quite quickly back then as well. Also.
Yes, and we
You
witnessed
things
it,
are progressing really, leaps and bounds. If that's a strategy, yeah.
Here's where she burns through a couple of husbands, has a couple of children, renews her faith. Her parents were, supportive, and she writes a book.
Figures out, where the poor decision making was.
Right. Yeah.
But it's too late. I mean, that's water over the dam. Yeah.
Not too late. Here we go. So but she does break down. How did she get so sucked into that lifestyle?
And that they couldn't do any of these things, yet here they are in the 1800s having, newspapers, having meetings, having organized groups, having public debates with each other. That doesn't really fit with the oppression narrative, huh? What else is wrong? So I started digging further back and just found all of this historical evidence that's right there in these women's own words that they penned themselves, saying, look, we have a very privileged position under male suffrage, under patriarchy. We're actually the main benefactors under a patriarchy, not the men. And they would write about the problems they could foresee with changing that they felt it would turn husbands and wives against each other, that a house divided couldn't stand, that they would lose their moral high ground as a non-political group, that they didn't want to be drafted, that they didn't want to be subject to a lot of the horrors and the dirty and difficult things
I couldn't
men
imagine my wife
on
doing
behalf
that
of their wives and
job.
children. And I found that I just thought that their reasoning was very solid, very rational. It wasn't emotional. And that the other side was actually very irrational and revolutionary minded. It was like this revolutionary spirit in the feminist side. So I dig further into the feminist side and find that they openly thought of Lucifer as their liberator. And they wrote about this. And these are women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Matilda Joslyn Gage, like some of the greats of the suffrage movement. And I found a book that's actually a PhD thesis by a professor in Stockholm named Per Faxneld, and you can buy his book on Amazon. He turned the thesis into a book. It's very big, it's very dense, and he's actually an occultist himself. So he writes about this from the view that it's cool and it was a good thing. However, he and I come to a lot of the same conclusions actually about it. And yes, these women thought, they identified as Christians, okay, because they were like these radical reformer Protestants, but they would say, actually, no, we think that the old Christianity, the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox, they got everything wrong. They're patriarchists, right? So they didn't really give us the word of God. They gave us nonsense. And it's crazy because they're very Gnostic, very Luciferian.
They're going to talk, or she's going to talk about this thing that was so popular in the late 1800s called the Woman's Bible. That basically is going over what she thought, that, the history was written from a man's point of view, and it was
who published the Woman's Bible? Who got credit to?
I hope
as
she
an
does go over
author?
that. I know that she talks about that it only King James Version outsold it. You know, it was a very popular book, but who's going to be re-educated? Right now, what they don't, you know, when
Well, how many
history
times
does
do you
this,
need to be normalized? Well, as many times as what's required.
right? And when fascism comes into power, you know, after a war, after a time of when Satan is developing these governments, there were the flappers, there was the pre-code Hollywood, there were the men or the women dressing like men, and then there wasn't, because they said no more. This isn't working. We're cracking down. This is stupid. You're not doing it anymore. In Germany, they called it you're being decadent. In the United States, we don't know what they call it because they cover up our racist past. They just barely admit we have anything to do with eugenics. But just, I wanted you to prepare yourself for this
Okay.
woman's Bible, the breakdown on the
Like I
numbers.
say, this seems like a comedy episode that you're presenting, but
No,
to
this
me,
was the where was the comedy one I saved? You know,
Exposure to children about LGBT people is automatically grooming.
It seems to be emboldening anti-gay trolls. Explain how.
Not just libs of TikTok, but this guy, James Lindsay, they would say, hey, there's going to be something at this library. You know, they're going to read books. You know, a drag queen's going to come and read books.
How do you fix it? How do you undo it?
Well, at this point, you know, it's deprogramming.
That's what we're being fed. People of other races are out to get you. We accept that. We get fed that. And so when that doorbell rings or the basketball comes into your yard, your first response is to pull that gun. It's a programming that's occurring. The deprogramming question is much.
this girl, the woman's Bible, was it popular, young lady?
And they saw Lucifer as the liberator of women. They rewrote the Bible from a feminist perspective. We're talking 1895, you guys. 1895, there's 38 women that get together and rewrite the Bible from a feminist perspective, take out all of the patriarchy stuff they don't like, take the blame of Eve in the garden completely away and place it all on Adam and the serpent. Just basically rewrote the Bible. Now, in 1895, this was so popular, it had several reprintings and was a bestseller, and you can still buy it right now on Amazon to this day, The Woman's Bible. And it was profoundly influential. Like a lot of you guys who, if you are still in a Protestant church, you probably have no idea how much this book influenced the Protestant churches in America from.
This is where, so it was 9 minutes in before I figured, okay, the Russian icons, okay, this is a Russian
you're a
Orthodox.
third of the way in of a 30-minute, yeah.
Yeah. So let's take some of her advice, you know, because I'm not going to advise you to go to the Russian Orthodox Church, anybody.
Advice for women.
And why are things the way that they are? You have to go back in history, just like we do when looking into the Orthodox Church. You know, go back in history and see, you know, which church, you know, Christ founded and which church is like true to those. So what other advice though would you give to like a young woman?
I always say visit an Orthodox church because that's where the proper worldview comes from, in my opinion. But if you're, let's say you're not going to do that, like I'm friends with Tim and Stephanie Gordon, very devout.
So what I tell the people, what I want you to believe,
that worked, right?
There's a lot of truth coming out.
Okay, yeah, those are my intentions.
And it's going to come out. And that doesn't mean that all the truth is going to come out. There's going to come out what they want to come out. They want more spying on you. They want you to believe that it's going to be okay. I do not believe that that is the case, and that you know, people are done with the market. JD Vance, it doesn't matter if the people in Europe, it's as bad as as we think it, as we know it is. They're make America great again, make your living talking about golden age past on YouTube. It's time for people to start saying, you know what, we might have another election, but it looks like the Trump, they're identifying people. Now they know who are the true flat earthers, who are the people that, you know, it's been 10 years. 5 years ago, they put the brakes on it. You're stupid if you still believe in flat earth. Well, there are those people. There are those people that, okay, you can choose your sex. You know, hey, are you going to let your baby choose its sex when it's older? That's over now too. People are going to realize that was some stupid, sick science, but they're exposed. You can't go back and go like, oh, no, I didn't say that.
Yeah, you can regret having a tattoo maybe, and possibly, you know, having it removed, what, you know, however that's done. Yeah, there's interesting times.
Is
Yeah.
it too out of the question that that one of these 300-pound women that like to eat biscuits and dye their hair pink get a,
who doesn't? Yeah.
you know, a knock on the door? You go like, is this you? Did you say that? What are they going to do? No. Yeah. What? I'm woman, hear me roar. You better back off. You know, they're not going to back off. They're going to say, you were propagating baloney, this or that. Who's going to have to be re-educated here? That's what I'm saying. They talked about the FEMA camps. They talk about this and that. We're broke. We have the insurance problems. They wanted stress in the nation. RJ, we got it. Without Jesus, you know, I'm at a point right now where I just spent 5 months proving that a university lied to a veteran, tried to double his bill and kick him out of school. And that's a lot of stress, but we have to do what's right. The people listening right now, you have to do what's right. They want you under stress. The only way I could do it is like, Lord brought me here for this reason. I didn't know that it was going to culminate with the DEI exposure of Trump right when I am. But right now, they're completely guilty. They've been shown the bill. You cut it in half. You lied to my face for 4 months. That helps me going forward as a minister to say, they will lie to your face time and time again. And if I would have given up, quit, and left school and lost the money, they would have been happy.
But the fact of the matter that, you know, sure, they cut your bill in half, which you appreciated, but that doesn't mean that the bill is still legitimate.
Exactly. They still haven't shown me an itemized bill, which is why I can live here right now and plan on staying, because they've overplayed their hand. They thought it was going to keep going up. They were as sure that Trump wouldn't get reelected, he was going to be as impeached, as they were sure that Hillary Rodham Clinton would beat Donald Trump the first time. That she wouldn't have had, that she would have been nominated instead of Obama in 2008. She was that close then.
Yeah, now it's, you know, now that they're the amount of hemorrhaging of, well, it isn't all taxpayer. I mean, look what they've, you know, printed digitally and distributed to whoever received it. You know,
the only
you
reason
can't
they
even
tax people is to
more
make
than
them
what
think
they're
it.
able to follow.
We're gonna be wrapping it up. Let's get Vara on and say, Vara, do you feel like you pay enough taxes, Vara, or that if you and your friends chipped in a little bit more, the government would be wouldn't waste it?
Sorry, can you ask that again?
If you and your friends paid more taxes, how confident are you that the government would pay their bills on time now and wouldn't keep running up debt?
Well, they're raising taxes as it is already, so they're gonna have no choice.
They're going to have no choice. RJ, when they raise taxes, if everybody
Well,
had
mine
their,
only went up 86.5 over yonder, and it was 65 something where I'm at, you know, in a calendar year percent. Yeah, those are.
and if they took all the money, if they took all the money that the citizens had, we'd still be trillions in debt. Our contribution is just a drop in the bucket to the amount of debt that they run up every year. Our taxes can't cover what we do, so they just spend more and more and more. No consequence, but we can't.
The thing is, the way it appears, more than 50% of that is actually being embezzled. It's not,
50%.
I would say,
yeah,
at least half of it is being embezzled, and then it's laundered and whatever, and that's why, yeah, you need the opium wars and what have you, or the next best synthetic joy you can find. But yeah.
Vara, what do you think about re-education camps possibility? That, I mean, we do know in 1958 in the United States, everybody that got paid by the government had to swear an affidavit that the government hadn't been taken over and that they swear true loyalty to the United States. Why couldn't they do something like that again? Make everybody do another loyalty test.
I think, if they redid, what history shows you, like today, well, a third of us would be getting the lobotomies, no doubt.
I know I'm not signing any affidavit that I don't think the United States government
if you're
has
lucky,
been taken
you'd end up with a lobotomy, but, you might as well just go in front of the firing squad or bury me alive type, dig the hole, and hop in and.
Vara, you're relatively new around here and one of the few outsiders that have managed to work your way in. RJ, you've known me for almost a decade. It's a lot easier to believe what I'm teaching now than it was then, right? Because then everything was just going swimmingly. We've had 10 years of the stock market going straight up. And I was saying, no, it's all falling apart. We're going away, man.
The pandemic.
We got to run for the hills. And I'm still saying that. We got to run for the hills. Is there anything either of you want to add before I wrap this up, our hour?
Well, hopefully it takes a lot of living.
That's right. Because there's a lot of living left to do, people. And there's a lot of loving the Lord left to do. Vara, do you have anything you want to add? Any encouragement for the people still questioning their programming? I mean, you're not even a millennial. You're a Gen X, right? You're under 32 years old.
I'm a genius, man. I'm one of a kind, really. No.
Very unique. Yeah.
Seriously though, what I'm seeing.
To the extreme.
What I'm seeing right now is just the zeitgeist coming to life, but there's always this sort of I don't know, I guess it's just a feeling or a faith or hope or desperate cling to some righteousness left in the world. But there's I feel like there's a group of people in the background, making plans and just getting ready to, I feel like people are getting ready to wake up.
Yeah. There were some There were a couple of pictures that I didn't quite show that I might want to make time for.
I do have a confession of sin to make. That's why I wanted to come in and have you guys as my pastors.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, it's something visual. I have to show this, you know. I have to show this also. Because it's weird. I was reading the Bible. I was smoking some weed first after work. Then I had this impulsive thought of, hey, let me just get this, what does John 1:1 really mean? Because I don't know. I didn't get into it that deep yet. But I go to Bible Hub, look at the interlinear all of it, and read through it a little bit. It's just referring to the same thing. It's referring to the word. Okay, I went through that. But then I had this another kind of impulse out of nowhere. Because I remember what I did at work today. I stole something from work. And I have to show what I did.
Oh boy. Like a stapler
They had
or
it
something?
coming. Yeah.
Like a stapler? Or what kind of, did you steal a computer or
Well,
a
let me show
paperclip?
it.
You know?
It's on camera. You can show it. I want to
Oh.
show. I want to show it to the world.
Oh, on the security camera, they caught you.
So
the candy dish at the
Some chocolate candy. And my employer will never see this stream, but I figured I would get a clear conscience if I just, told my story. And hey, it's a big freaking,
empty
organization.
calories. Empty calories.
Take it back. Take it back.
Nothing. This is nothing to them. That's how I, of course, justified to myself. But
And
yeah,
that's, a little bit here, a little bit there.
But I was just saying it's a big freaking organization, and I could complain about so many things about them as a bureaucratic kind of establishment. But I like the people I work with there, and honestly, maybe the restaurant manager, if I told her what I did, she would probably laugh and say, "Forget about it."
Yeah,
make
there's more
candy?
where that came from.
Do you make candy at that store?
No, it's like a restaurant, hotel, nightclub complex building.
I watched people work today.
Haters.
Yeah. So if anybody's looking for a job in Alamosa and you're not into the academic world, there are plenty of jobs in the agricultural world. We live on the world's largest aqueduct, and it's so sparsely populated, it's like Siberia. As a matter of fact, there were 6 places in the United States where they were going to test fake atomic bombs. They chose that Los Alamos area and then the Las Vegas area. But Alamosa was on the list because there's nobody that lives here. That's why I wanted people to move here. That's why the Lord brought me here. And the chance to catch them in a lie, the DEI people, that's just gravy in the life that the Lord has given me. That's what I want people to remember. That's why when all of this sounded ridiculous to RJ, the theology made sense to him, but it made sense to him because of something I feel the Lord is drawing me back to, and that's that the stones are crying out. And RJ and I did things that kind of made us famous in 2017 and 18 and 19 with the rocks and proving that they were the body parts of Titans. That's a whole other subculture that we started. that we don't have time to get into, but we've got to get back into it, RJ.
Life's full of choices.
I was glad, though, that we decided to figure the Bible out first and then go back to the stones.
So far, are they all the same chocolates, or is there a variety of flavors?
There's three different kinds. They're all made by the same company.
Sure.
We have like one or two companies that makes all the candy.
Cool.
Everybody, thank you for joining us.
Regular milk chocolate.
I want to remind you that it is a flat Earth nation. The golden age is past. That would imply the 1,000 years are over. And after the 1,000 years, there is the reaping. And then there is your orphan trained, circumcised butt going, how did I get here? God knew you from the beginning of time. I hope that you're called, chosen, and faithful. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Knock 'em, man.